Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Herding Squirrels, a podcast about modern teams and change. Today, we're excited to bring in Kit Lyle. Kit runs the world's leading collaborative peer support community for PE-backed executives and operating partners, the Operators.pe. Having surrounded himself with highly experienced operators and with 30 years of experience in the PE ecosystem, Kit has been aggregating best practices and sharing them in writing, on the stage, and as well in podcasts like this one. Thanks so much for joining us, Kit. We're excited to have you.
Hey, Brandon, it's great to be here. Thanks.
I joined one of Kit's Operators.pe group meetings the other day, and I just felt an energy around Kit. If you can maybe just share for us a little bit, what is it you're doing in a little more detail, and what is it you love about what you do?
Well, what I love about what I do is I'm surrounded by experienced, best practice operators, and all day, every day, I'm hearing people share their words of wisdom, their experiences, their pain points. So, I consider myself a lifelong learner. I like to explore new ideas, new concepts, and this is a role that I'm in which I spend pretty much all day, every day talking to people and learning and absorbing. And, so it's a huge amount of fun for me. I have also discovered a talent or a skill or whatever you call it, a superpower that I didn't know I had, and that is facilitating really good introductions. So sometimes I hear somebody talk and I'm like, wait a second, I know somebody I've got to introduce you to. I may not remember that person's name at the moment, but I can suss that out. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. Yeah, there's three quick areas. First, I run peer advisory groups. I did that starting 5 years ago. Loved it. Was getting a lot out of it. Members were enjoying it and feeling like they were getting tremendous value. So I wanted more. I wanted more groups. I wanted more members of the peer group. So I went to the interweb and started typing in logical keywords like association and society and PE backed, and found absolutely Zippo. And I couldn't believe, like literally refused to believe, there's no possible way that in this sophisticated ecosystem of private equity, that there is no place where private equity backed executives come together, collaborate, share best practices, ideate, ask questions, network, participate in discussions. That has to exist. Maybe it's a club, maybe it's a community or a society, but I got to find it. And kept asking people, and enough people said, that's a really good idea. We need that, but it does not exist. So just create it. So that leads into the second area I'm involved in, which is the community called the Operators.pe. And then thirdly, one of the idiosyncrasies, I guess, of the private equity ecosystem is that when a founder-led or family-owned business is acquired by private equity for the very first time, never owned by institutional capital before, there's, I would estimate, an 80% likelihood that things are going to go off the rails and be a complete mess. And I like fixing things. I like solving inefficiencies. So I'm serving now as a fractional operating partner and sometimes coach or advisor in ensuring alignment or improved alignment between the board and the management team.
Amazing. Which is why you're an absolute perfect fit for the show, because we're here talking about people and change. And I want to dig a little bit more into that 80% likelihood, because that is not a small number, Kit. and from the folks I've been talking to, it seems like this challenge, this impact of change, whether it's with PE and even in M&A in general, there's this massive challenge, and it does seem a very, very high percentage of things going sideways, like you put it. Why do things go sideways, and why are we not getting a lot better at this, even though we've been doing it for decades now?
I suspect things are changing rapidly right now, 2026, because there's never been more of a sense of urgency around value creation than there is right now. There's just so much at stake today. Private equity has never been in a situation like this that we're in right now, with the extended hold periods, the high interest rates, the frustrated, disappointed LPs, and the list goes on. So it will be fixed. Value creation will happen in a more proactive and operational, hands-on manner. But the blame is really can be spread around. So I'm going to start with the mindset that private equity typically has in the lower middle market of what I call wait and see. So the logic going in is that we're going to acquire this company. We're going to wait roughly a year. Maybe it's 9 months, maybe it's 18 months, but in the time period that we're waiting, we're, treading lightly. We're not upsetting the apple cart. We're certainly not offending the founder. We're trying to very gradually impart our wisdom and our way. And after about a year, then it'll be more palatable for us to dive right in. And what we're going to do is figure out who is swimming and who has sunk, and we're going to replace those who have sunk with experienced operators. That's the standard operating procedure. And the reason it doesn't work is that it's simply incredibly inefficient. And in addition to being inefficient, you're not arming the potential talent with the tools they need to do their jobs. And I'll give you two examples: the investment thesis and the value creation plan. Every member of the management team deserves to have the value creation plan and the thesis so that they understand the context of why the company was acquired, what the expectations are, where they see value, perhaps even in what priority, over what time period, and so forth. So those are two that are on the deal team side. A couple that are on the management team side are they need to ask questions. The questions can be boiled down to why did you do this deal? If you're not going to share the thesis and the VCP with me, then let's just talk about it. Why did you buy the company? What were your concerns? What is worrying you or keeping you up at night? What did you find during diligence that's disconcerting? Those are, and the list could go on, of course. Those are the basic questions around why. They also need to know who. So they need to understand the governance, the decision rights. In what situations do I make the call? In what situations do we need to ask for approval? And, ideally you'd create sort of a who map, and you'd map it all out about what types of decisions and situations and, EBITDA ranges or expenditure ranges are we talking about. Next is when do we expect to exit? We need to backwards plan from that date. Where do we stand right now today in terms of likelihood to achieve the value creation plan? Are we more likely today or less likely than we were in the last board meeting? This is a mindset that does not come naturally to founder-led companies that are historically run sort of like benevolent dictatorships in which the management team doesn't really get to make strategic decisions. They're just there to say yes and do what they're told. So this is a completely new environment for them. They've never reported to a board before. And so, if you're the management team member working on a company where you used to report to a founder and now you're reporting to a board, there's a lot to learn. And it's incumbent on you to ask questions like who, why, when, where do we stand? And lastly, what leadership style would be most effective in this company at this stage and situation and size? So the 80% that is a mess, as I said, can be solved in large part by actually having an onboarding program, a training program for the management team. And I'll go one step further and say the other solution is management or organizational due diligence. Because if we can identify maybe two people who frankly may have the knowledge and skills and experience to do their job well, but not in a private equity environment, then let's do them a favor and enable them to succeed in another environment somewhere else. So let's pay them to move on to a different environment. And then we can do what we are going to do in a year anyway, which is bring on experienced operators. But if we can do that in the first 100 days, it's much more likely we'll gain traction and start creating value.
That's thank you so much for the way that you broke that down. It's very, very succinct, and I also really like how it's two sided, right? It's not just one side saying, hey, like, we're holding back on the value creation plan, the deal thesis, and then there's the whole management side as well too, right? Like, you've got to ask the right questions. What it feels like it's really coming down to is, and I'm going to tail it back into kind of change management and communication, right? Alignment, getting people on the same page. What happens, like, so walk me through this 80% now a little bit further, right? So okay, so now we're not sharing the investment thesis and the value creation plan on the one side, and now I don't have any idea of what's going on here. what's happening in this organization during this time period. Like, what are people doing? Do they not have? Are they just trying to run the business as usual? Are they pausing? Are they like what's going on in this space when there's this confusion that's happening?
Yeah, there are five risk factors that, in my opinion, are part of the cause of this failure or this mess that often happens in the lower middle market. And I'll walk you through those five failures. And it does explain what does happen. So, first of all, there's misalignment. And what does that mean? Well, internally amongst the management team, we might have a chief revenue officer who's focused on price increases. We may have a CFO who's focused on reducing costs. We might have a CEO who's talking about, new logos, new brands, new customers we're going after. Three relevant, they're each doing their jobs, but frankly, they're at odds to one another. In other words, they're all rowing in slightly different directions. So what's happening to the canoe when you've got three people internally misaligned? We also have alignment with the board. So we need to ensure that the expectations, the key priorities, the way we need to report and message and signal the board is clearly understood and conveyed to the management team. And then thirdly, alignment involves customers, channel partners, suppliers, in other words, third-party stakeholders. So that's just one. That's alignment. Number two is governance and decision rights. We sort of talked about that a minute ago. So just understanding who has the ability to make what decisions, who has to ask for permission, who has to collaborate, in what circumstances and situations. Third is deployment. And I'll give you an example of what I mean by deployment. The board communicates very clearly to the CEO. So the CEO understands what the board's intentions are. The CEO communicates to the executive leadership team. Most members of that management team get it, understand it, they're on the same page. By the time it gets down to the plant manager level or the regional sales VP level, that's where things are not what I call line of sight, meaning the CEO often assumes, well, I had a town hall meeting and I told everybody what the expectations were and what was changing and what our priorities are. And I did my job. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know why is this confusing? Well, it's the job of the CEO and frankly, everybody involved in management to ensure deployment, meaning why are we doing this? What is changing? What are we going to stop doing? Which is just as important as what are we going to start doing? And frankly, what's in it for me? So the plant manager might say, thanks, but no thanks. I've been here 20 years. I've seen a lot of changes come and go. I've got my own processes. I'm just going to keep doing things the way I want. And thank you very much. I'm doing a good job. I'll be fine. And that happens a lot because people are not doing the next step, which is holding people accountable. So accountability is next. That's the fourth risk factor. And then the fifth one is leadership style. So what is the way that we are encouraging things like south to north communication? In many situations, particularly in the lower middle market, again, the CEO assumes that they have, a clear channel, clear path to receive feedback, but maybe it's their mindset or attitude or demeanor. Maybe they've got some new employees who are just intimidated. Sometimes it takes 3, 4, 5 times of a CEO saying, I genuinely and sincerely want to know what is not working. What's the one thing we should change? What is a hurdle or a blocker or roadblock that I, as the CEO of this company, need to be aware of? Bring it to me. Tell me. You're not going to be held, this is not about accountability. This is about me understanding what our problems are. So if those 5 are not done, if we don't have alignment, we don't have good governance and understanding of decision rights or deployment or accountability or the appropriate leadership style, value creation is simply not going to happen.
As a very thorough and exhaustive list, Kit. Thank you for that.
Sorry,
I love.
Sorry to be
no.
thorough.
I'm taking notes. No, sorry. No, it's fantastic because it's. I think right. I mean, you're hitting on this 80% chance, and one of the reasons why we're focused on PE and acquisitions and change is I think a lot of the lessons that we talk about here, they're applicable everywhere. We're all going through such massive change right now with AI and the way work is happening that a lot of these things, they go everywhere, right? Leadership listening and truly wanting to understand what are the blockers, what are the things that are going to make us fail. Yet systems, interpersonal dynamics, group dynamics, hierarchy dynamics, these things all make it so hard to speak up. You just give a perfect example of the CEO. It might take that CEO 5 times to say, no, I really do want you to come to me. What what are some other tools and steps that leaders can be taking, right, during these massive times of change, and especially within, I'm guessing, right, this first 90 days has to be extremely important from day one as to how everything flows from there. So what are some things that should be done right off the bat?
I'd say in that first 100 days, the definition of success is 2 wins, 2 quick wins. In other words, 2 quick and simple wins. So something small but tangible so that the CEO can say internally, see, look, we have decided to do something that's important, that is a priority, and we've done it. And now we can point to the impact that that's having, for example, on our EBITDA. It's also critically important with the board to establish trust and credibility in that first 100 days. And as we talk about the board, I've got a list of something like 27 questions that the management team should, in one way, shape, or form, be asking the board. This could be the CFO asking some and the COO asking others. It could be in one board meeting and another board meeting. But ideally, these are conversations that happen between board meetings. And so establishing rapport and credibility and trust, all of that process, believe it or not, happens in between board meetings. A good board meeting is not a good readout or report. It's not about getting permission. It's not about sharing something that you're doing. It's really an intellectually stimulating conversation, because all of the reporting has happened before the meeting. There should be no surprises in the meeting. So everything that I'm sharing with you is most likely new and different, and maybe perhaps a little bit counterintuitive to a member of a management team who's an incumbent. In other words, they used to report to a founder or family because they probably have never been involved in a board meeting before. And their standard assumption is that a board meeting is there for reporting or for permission or to explain what you've been doing. It's not about collaboration. Well, actually it is. It's all about collaboration. So collaborating on, hey, these are the decisions that we're trying to make. We're struggling. We're not in agreement yet. We value your input. Here are the data. Here's the facts. This is our analysis. This is my judgment. This is Bill's judgment over on the sales side. What do you guys think? We'd appreciate your feedback, board. That's some of the signs of a good board meeting are those kinds of fulsome, candid, open requests for input.
This all sounds amazing, right? If we can have this type of relationship, this openness, this collaboration, let's work together. I think in theory that's great, but in reality, there's a balance of, I've got a new board, I've got an old leadership team. So, right, this leadership team is now probably feels like they're a little bit under the magnifying glass. You've got, right, this new board, and you have this new, we'll call it like middle management. I want to go back to your plant supervisor who has a process that they know works. They're not going to change. So I'm seeing this important space for trust, this need for trust in order to get to this type of relationship, this type of collaboration between all the levels. And yet at the same time, there's a tension of people aren't sure what's going to be happening 3 months, 6 months down the road. They're kind of, there's almost like it's like you're in a tryout period again, right? It's like, ooh, everything's new. And the tendency is to maybe keep your head down a little bit. So how do you solve for that tension of wanting to build this trust in these relationships, but also knowing that this is a little bit of a duck and cover time as well, right? Just naturally from humans and change and how we're trying to suss out the situation before we're maybe too daring with our information.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because in my experience, many members of a management team have the knowledge of the industry, the experience and skills in their specific role, They certainly have the experience in the size range that they work in, obviously by definition, but what are they missing? And sometimes what's missing is the drive and the willingness to put themselves through the ringer in terms of pressure and time constraints and expectations. And some people are not cut out for it. That's just not what they want out of life. And as I said earlier, we should give those people, frankly, the opportunity to succeed elsewhere as early as we can, because otherwise we're just causing pain and frustration for everybody for a longer period than is necessary. So that's really the first thing I would say. The second piece of this is if we get past that test, then the next test is, do we have a desire or a willingness to learn and change and adapt? So again, not everybody really wants to change or learn new tricks. The people who I've seen with the most degree of success demonstrate conscientious, what's the right word? Genuine interest in improvement, self-improvement. So they ask for input, they ask for feedback, they ask for advice. It's not about mother may I and asking for permission. It's about humility and candor and saying, I've never reported to a private equity board before. I am comfortable in my role, but maybe not in this particular situation. Therefore, I need to ask for some advice here. I just want to get better, right? And if you put it in those terms, it's hard for a board member or somebody that might have the ability to get you fired to say, well, we're not going to invest in that person. So demonstrating sincere, genuine interest, asking questions, asking for input and advice, that's half the battle right there, I'd say.
I've one last question for you, Kit. As I said before, we're covering all aspects of change on our podcast, and we have a lot of leaders from a bunch of different areas. If you could give advice to any leader out there leading their team through change, whether it's transformation or AI adoption, or working for a new PE board, what would that advice be?
I like to give the analogy of, imagine that we're all on a raft together and we're rowing down the Colorado River, and we're at a lull, and the water's moving very, very slowly, and we kind of pull up on some pebbles on the side and maybe have a lunch, and we talk about it, and we say, all right, so far it's been relatively easy. Things are about to change, and it's going to get really hard and frankly dangerous. This is maybe not a life or death situation, but we need to take this next part seriously. So when I say pull hard on the left side, you really need to pull hard on the left side. So it's similar to a CEO saying, I know you've never done this before. I know you've never been in this situation before. I'm going to ask for a little bit of trust, but I'm also going to ask for your feedback. But we're going to need everybody doing this together. This is a priority for us, and we're going to take it in sequences. And I need you to do what I'm asking of you, because we are all depending on you to do what you're told in order for us to make it through to the other side. So this could get hairy. So yeah, it's the best example that I can think of what a team is going to have to do together. They're all going to have to pull in the same direction, and they're going to be pulling in ways maybe they've never pulled using their left side. Maybe they've never been in a boat before. Maybe they've never been in extremely turbulent water where they could get pulled under and frankly held under. This is serious stuff. So in order to make it, we all have to collaborate. And so part of it is, understanding the situation that we're in. And not everybody wants to shift their mindset from, I'm showing up for work and I get a paycheck and then I go home. Maybe that's what it was like for 20 years. And then all of a sudden the company was acquired by private equity. And it's like, I'll give you, Brandon, I'm going to just go a little bit further here. In some situations, what you have is the most senior incumbent member of the management team. So in other words, the person who was there before the acquisition, who was the senior most person, that person often receives a lot of questions. Where's the fire? Where's the urgency? Why are we working so hard? I don't understand why. Why are there so much stress and pressure around here? What's in it for me? What's different? What was wrong with the way things when Bill owned this company? can somebody please tell me why we are the ones that have to change? They bought us. They obviously saw something they liked in us. Why are we doing things differently? So somebody has to explain all of that and hopefully get everybody on the same page in terms of here's the vision, here's the why statement, here's where we're going, and this is frankly what's in it for you. And another person in our community puts it this way. He says, "I have my train speech. The train is leaving the station. We are going to the next station. Things are going to be different in this journey to our next station. If you want to stay on this train, you are going to have to change in a number of ways, and they are blah, blah, blah. If you do not want to proceed to the next station, now is the time to get off." And it's just that black and white. So I'll pause there, but I'd say, to leave this on a positive note, I would say, if we can, as a team, understand the why are we doing things differently and what's in it for me as an individual, it does help a lot. Without that, people are just left to, all right, well, this is just different. And humans do not like change. So we have to get past that.
No, we do not like change. Oh, this has been fantastic, Kit. Thank you. Kit, if other people want to find more of you and the operators, where can we find more of you on the internet?
So Kit Lyle, I think I'm the only KITLISLE on LinkedIn. And then my email address is kit@theoperators.pe, as in private equity. But LinkedIn, I post a lot on LinkedIn. So look for me there.
Excellent. Wonderful. Well, we'll include that in our show notes so everyone can find you. Otherwise, Kit, thank you so much for coming onto the show. This has been a blast, a ton of great information. And thank you to all the listeners for joining us on Herding Squirrels, where we uncover the nuts and bolts of teams.